All right, let's dive in. If you're trying to figure out what people actually mean when they say AI agents, and you want to get past all the hype, you've come to the right place. In the next few minutes, we're going to break it all down and build a really clear mental model so you can cut through the noise and make much better decisions. Let's get to it.
So first, we'll tackle those headlines that are causing so much anxiety. Then, we're going to build a clear vocabulary, making sure we know the difference between a model, a chatbot, and an agent. We'll also completely reframe what autonomy really means, look at the unique risks that agents bring to the table, and finally, give you a solid governance framework. The whole point is to move from a place of fear to one of structure.
So yeah, let's start with the noise. The conversation around AI agents is absolutely everywhere, and it's often confusing, and let's be honest, kind of alarming. It's just full of these huge, sweeping predictions that make it feel almost impossible to tell what's real and what's just hype.
I'm sure you've seen headlines exactly like this one. This whole idea that autonomous digital workers are just around the corner, ready to make entire teams obsolete. It's a story that, understandably, creates a ton of uncertainty.
And then the hype just keeps going, right? It escalates to suggestions that these agents can take over incredibly complex strategic operations, essentially running a business all on their own.
And this is really the heart of the anxiety, isn't it? The idea of an AI that acts on its own with its own agenda. But here's the thing. Most of this fear comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what an agent actually is, and maybe more importantly, what it is not.
Okay, so to get past that fear, we need a clearer vocabulary. Let's start right here. An agent is not a new kind of brain. It's a system, and it's built from components that we can understand, and this is the most important part, that we can control.
All right, let's break this down. In that first column, you've got a model. Think GPT-4. It's just the engine. Its only job is to generate outputs. It can't do anything. Then in the middle, you have a chatbot. That's just a user interface built around the model. Still no ability to take action. The big difference is the agent. An agent takes a model, puts it inside a system, and then gives it access to tools. That is where the ability to act comes from.
And this is really the most crucial point to get. The intelligence of an agent comes from that model underneath, which is a static, fixed component. But the agent's behavior, that comes from the system we design around it. It's not thinking for itself. It's following instructions and using the tools we give it.
So what does that system actually do? Well, it runs in a very simple mechanical loop. First, it observes its environment. Second, it uses the language model to figure out the next logical action. Third, it executes that action. It calls a tool, like an API. Fourth, it gets some feedback on what happened. And then, it just does it all over again. It repeats. This is a process, not a thought.
Okay, and this is probably the single most important thing to get right. This whole loop, it can really look like it's learning, but it's not. The model inside that agent is locked. It's being used to make predictions, but it is not being retrained with new data. And if that retraining isn't happening, no actual learning is going on. Period.
Which brings us to two words that get thrown around a lot and cause a ton of confusion: autonomy and intelligence. We tend to use them like they mean the same thing, but when we're talking about agents, they are completely different concepts.
So, autonomy. It isn't some magical quality the AI just develops on its own. It is, plain and simple, a business decision. Think of it like a permission slip or a budget for action that we, the human designers, grant to the system. We are the ones who decide the scope and the scale of what it's allowed to do.
Think about it this way. When we give an agent more autonomy, what does the AI itself gain? Absolutely nothing. The model doesn't get one bit smarter. What changes is the permission we grant it to act without our approval. And that is the fundamental trade-off. More autonomy can create more value, for sure, but it always comes with higher operational risk.
And this is why that distinction is so critical. Because that core model isn't learning, an agent that makes a mistake once will make that same exact mistake again if the conditions are the same. It's designed to coordinate actions we've defined, not to come up with new wisdom based on experience. And that means errors can, and absolutely will, scale.
Okay, so this leads us to probably the biggest shift in how we have to think about risk as leaders. When we go from a chatbot to an agent, we're moving from the risk of getting words wrong to the risk of taking the wrong actions.
When a chatbot makes a mistake, it might give a customer a wrong fact. We call that hallucinating information. But an agent that has permission to act, it can hallucinate an action. It might send an invoice to the wrong person, delete the right file by mistake, or trigger a completely incorrect workflow. The consequences are immediate, and they are very real.
And that's why the risk is just in a totally different league. Agents run their loops at machine speed. So a tiny error can compound into a massive failure before a human can even blink. It's not that agents are inherently worse than chatbots, it's that they fail faster and with much bigger consequences, for the simple reason that they can act.
So when you look under the hood of an agent, it's not magic, it's just engineering. It's a system built from distinct parts. You have a planner that suggests what to do next, an executor to actually do it, and critically, you have tools, the APIs, that let it interact with the world. Each one is a component we design and control. These are all mechanisms for coordination, not for learning.
All right, so now that we have this clear, structured picture, how do we actually govern these things? It's not about being afraid of a rogue AI, it's about applying disciplined, rigorous systems thinking to a new kind of digital workforce.
Anytime you're looking at an agentic system, you need to be able to answer these 5 questions. No exceptions. What exactly can it do? Where is the human in the loop required? How does it handle context? And what's the plan for when it fails? And, most importantly, where is the off switch? These are the absolute fundamentals of implementing this technology responsibly.
And let's be crystal clear on this point. This is non-negotiable. If you don't have an immediate, reliable, and tested way for a human being to pause or override an agent, you do not have a governed system. What you have is an operational risk just waiting to happen.
Okay, let's tie this all together. The whole goal here is to move past the hype, to get a solid mental model so we can stop being passive spectators and start being active architects of these incredibly powerful new systems.
So if you remember nothing else, remember these 4 things. 1. Agents are systems, not beings. 2. The intelligence comes from the model, the behavior comes from our design. 3. Autonomy is a budget we grant, not wisdom the AI earns. And 4. The more autonomy we grant, the more risk we take on. That's it.
And that really brings us to the most powerful and honestly the most accurate way to think about all of this. AI agents do not learn or decide on their own. They execute loops that we designed at the speed and scale that we allowed. Our job is to design those loops with intention, with clarity, and with control.